All right, Jerry, welcome back to the show. I think this is your third or fourth time on here, so it's exciting to have you back. It's been a couple years, and I felt like the theme of today's show is really how do you thrive in a down market, right? As of the time of this recording, we're in a shifting market, at least up in my area in the Northeast, and I'm really looking towards really leaning on people who have been around the block in these down markets over the decades. To really kind of figure out what works, right? Because a lot of people looked really smart in the last 2-3 years selling houses and in an up market, but now we're kind of going the other way. So, man, you're just a wealth of knowledge. You got a lot of things going. Before we get into some of that stuff, if you can just kind of give everyone like your background and how you got to where you're at, and then we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah. Well, first of all, Greg, thanks, bro. Good to see you.
Pleasure, buddy.
Nice being back on, man. So, just kind of give you guys a quick snapshot back in time. It's gosh, I can't believe. I mean, matter in just a few months is going to be 29 years. Greg.
Wow, man, that's great. Older than me.
Yeah. So started in 1994 in the business, and started off over in Springfield, Ohio. That's where I started. I live currently now in Germantown, Ohio, which is really around Dayton area.
Okay.
But I started off over there, and I worked in the business with my wife. And I'll tell you how I got started was really I was in a position where I was with my father in an electrical contracting business. We ended up going out of business because a big general contractor closed his doors on us, and we were a subcontractor. We got kind of hit on that. Ended up filing bankruptcy and trying to figure out what to do. Saw an advertisement on a local TV station, Greg, about an upcoming seminar in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I decided to go to that seminar. It was a gentleman named Charles Gibbons. Very few people have heard of him. He's
never heard of that guy. Sounds like never heard.
He's kind of one of the granddaddies in it, bud.
Yeah.
So, but I went to that event, and one of the strategies I learned there, Greg, was wholesaling. Really, they didn't even really call it wholesale. All they called it was an assignment of contract technique. Okay,
technically true.
Assignment of contract technique to make it official.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, I came back and I had to figure out how to do that. Of course, nobody. I mean, everybody went to. It's like nobody knew anything about it. Like, what is this? Never even heard of this before.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just started doing it and continued to grow that. Then I got into the fix and flip side of things, and I mean, it's just it really grew a lot. And I think I've shared my story too. I went through a big personal tragedy in 2001. I through the birth of my son and my wife, the day that he was born, found out that she had cancer, and it was just fought that. And 10 months later, after my baby boy was born, my wife passed away, and then I ended up probably taking about a couple years just to get myself reset and get myself back functioning again. And I got remarried and moved over to where I'm at now and built the business again. And over those years, man, I've been through multiple market cycles and you name it. I mean, a lot of people don't even think about, like, when 9/11 happened, that was a big market shift too. So
2001, right? That was 20 years ago, 21 years ago.
And boom, I mean, it went quiet as can be. And so it's just a lot of stuff over those years, bro. And so over those years, I've done the fix and flip model, wholesaling, multifamily, commercial, family dollar stores, general dollar stores,
everything.
What else? Mobile homes.
You've done a lot of single family rentals, right? You still have some single family rentals?
Single family rentals, yeah. Not as much as we used to. We built up some multifamily as well too, but we sold a lot of that stuff off in the last several years. So pretty well been through all that, Greg, and done a little bit of everything over those years. And what I've learned is just to really focus on building a company and let the company operate without me being involved in all the moving parts too.
Yeah, that is definitely your specialty is designing a system, really, and then having that system work.
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
The other way around. So yeah, because there's really like two models, right? There's the systematized model, right, where it's like a high volume, you'd call it a production line, if I'm pretty familiar with your work. And then there's the other model, which is the smaller model where people maybe they're in a more expensive market, let's say it's San Francisco, and they maybe pump out 1 or 2 properties a month, but they're making 100 grand a property, right? So there's really 2 angles to do it. You have mastered the system, the factory model of wholesaling. And that's actually the first thing I want to cover, is because a lot of people, they get into this business, they think about wholesaling as a way to make money. Let's say they're broke, right? Because that's pretty typical for most people. And then they get themselves kind of pigeonholed into this wholesaling trap where they're making money, and they're making more money than they might have before they started, but they're painting themselves into a corner, and they're doing a lot of the activities. They don't have any employees, not even VAs, and they're answering every lead. They're doing all the TC work. They're dealing with buyers. They're dealing with title issues, et cetera. So you've completely done the opposite. Like, you're in the Ohio. Are you just in Dayton, or are you all over the state of Ohio?
We cover a lot of Ohio and Kentucky and
So
some
that
other
whole kind of like Cincinnati, kind of that
Yeah.
whole
Yep.
area
Yep.
down there.
Yeah.
So what have you, I mean, obviously we're going to cover a lot of like down market stuff today, but like in terms of wholesale, like what are like the 1 or 2 things that you did to really get yourself removed from your business to where like you really don't have a lot of involvement? And I like people, like a lot of people say that, like I know Jerry personally is a good friend of mine. Like he literally could go on an island for 3 weeks and like his business will still run. Like some people might have a few employees and they're going to be by their phones the whole time. Like Jerry has legitimately mastered this. Like this guy knows his stuff. So what are like the 2 things that you did? Maybe they were mindset, maybe they were strategy to really get yourself out of the day-to-day, because there's so many moving parts in any business in real estate,
Well, I think one of the first things, Greg, that I was a real eye-opening thing for me was basically, and this is actually what I did. I actually drew a line down in the center of a piece of notebook paper. On one side, I wrote real estate. The other side, I wrote business. And what I realized was this, at that moment in time, this was years ago, I said, what's the difference here? And then I took real estate and I wrote really product next to it. Then I thought, okay, so if I was in the cell phone business, that's just a product. Then I started thinking real estate's no different. So I said, why couldn't I go over here and focus on building a business, put in the proper systems, proper processes backing all this, build in the proper boxes, for the people that fit into, and then start focusing on building a business model that just moves product.
Man, that I hope people rewind what you just said. And I just want to interject real quick, because this is where I think people get held up. When people get introduced to real estate investing, it's a very sexy topic. Usually,
like I said, personal.
It's personal, and they generally don't have money. Like most people don't have money when they start. At least I didn't. And it's like, oh, I can buy a house, which is like, oh, buy a house. The houses are expensive. So they get conditioned to associate a lot of sexiness to real estate. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's just a damn product. It's like if you were in the eyeglass business,
that's it.
You're not, I sell eyeglasses. It's like, these are boring. A house is the same damn thing, but you were just able to desensitize yourself to it.
But it took me quite a few years, unfortunately, to do that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Greg, I when I finally got that, I said, why am I fighting this? I said, this is stupid. I said, this is no different than anything else. And then I entered into what I call the business side of things. But then I took it to another level. And that was taking it from business to what I call a company.
Interesting. What are the differences there?
So here's what I've looked at on this, and I've learned this from some big people and that have a lot of different companies and stuff, is looking at it as a business. I can have a business having a hot dog stand on the corner. Sure. But how can I take it to a company? A company, if you really look at it, it allows you to be in a position where you don't have to, that company will grow and continue to excel without you being involved in the day-to-day side of things. And that's what I started looking at, is how can I do that? Because everybody talks about, working in the business, like we always talk about when you first start. Understand that. Then you start moving into working on the business. But my question to everybody is, how do you start working above the business and start making it to a company?
There's a big difference there. And people that this is something people are going to want to re-listen to the show, because there's the difference is like, if you're working on the business, you're maybe designing strategies, overseeing marketing, making sure your employees are hitting KPIs, doing like kind of like managerial stuff. If
Yes.
you're working above the business, it's really just high level vision. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's more of here's a good metaphors. Checkers versus chess.
Mm, that's good. The thing is, if you're in the business, you can't be playing chess because you're too busy occupying yourself playing checkers, making the next move.
Yes, 100% great. Yep.
That
So
is a big.
so that's why that I say to anybody that's, looking to scale, build things, definitely look at that side of things, because I think it'll really change your perspective on that. It did for me. And then another thing too, you talk about two different things. And this is something that I think that most people struggle with, and it's a word that very not too often is shared, and it's called constraints.
Mm,
Okay, and understanding how to put constraints on your business and you as well. That is a big key component. So what I mean by that is, like, for instance, I could be, and I used to do this all the time, and I'm sure you see investors, they have leads that come in, then they convert to a deal. And when they get into the deal pipeline, then they're like, man, should I fix this one? Should I wholesale
oh
this one?
man.
Should I
Welcome to my
read this
life,
one?
dude. That's my
Yeah,
day.
yeah. So here's the really cool thing, Greg. When you start putting constraints on that, what'll happen is you actually can determine which ones, basically you actually set up, it's more the production line thinking. Like, you actually empower your team by saying, I want to do this many wholesales and this many flips over the next year.
Yeah.
And what happens is, you basically, if you think about it, if you went in a think about if you were in a manufacturing environment, you just empowered your team so they know exactly how to produce the product without you being there.
Yeah.
Okay. You see what I'm
No,
talking
that makes
about on that?
sense. Yeah, that you're
Yeah,
training them on how to make decisions versus you making the decisions.
100%, 100%. Because what happens is, most entrepreneurs, especially in this space, what we suffer from so much is decision fatigue. And
Yeah.
it's like, man, I don't know what to do on this one. And dude, I just took myself out of all that. And I was like, I just don't make decisions on deals like that anymore, unless it's a more, it's a deal that maybe I'm going to keep, or if it's a complex deal or something like that. I don't do that anymore. I just took myself out of the decision-making process when it comes to that. Speeds up the production line. It allows you to be able to scale more and ultimately give you more freedom on things.
No, and people don't put an emphasis on like mental fatigue. And if you start at 6:30 a.m. and you're making decisions from 6:30 to 12:30 p.m., man, by 12:30, your brain is fried. Like you can't, and you can have the deal of a lifetime show up at 12:45. And if your brain isn't there mentally, it's like working out, not resting.
Yep.
You could fumble that football, right? Just like the New York Jets do a lot. I'm a Jets fan. I won't talk about that. But like, and if you allow yourself, and I've really paid a lot of attention to this, like, if I give myself the mental rest I need to make a good decision, whether that's for our business or for my personal situation, like, I don't even make decisions now if I'm not in a good state of mind, obviously, unless it's like, hey, we need to either buy this or not, then I got to
Right.
figure it out. But when someone calls me with something and it's a relatively important, let's say it's a business decision and I'm in a shitty mood, I'll say, listen, hey, thanks for calling me. Right now, I got to process this. I'm going to need 24 hours. And this is obviously assuming it's not urgent. I'm going to need to process this. And then when I get into a good state of mind, generally in the morning when I don't have my phone near me, I can think about how to make that decision. And then when I call that person back or text them, I give them a legitimate answer. But when you are so stuck in the weeds all day, you can't get any mental space to think, you fumble the ball, right? And there's all these opportunities. And then, like you said, if you train your team on how to make decisions, you don't have to really, they know how they need to make the decision most of the time. And then it
Yeah.
allows you to go above the business versus being stuck in the weeds.
Yeah. It allows you to, you're exactly right on that, Greg. We have to train the leaders to be decision makers. So,
And they love that. I've found out they really like that because it gives them really, it gives them empowerment. Like, they're not pigeonholed in a job. They're making a decision within the company that they have a stake in,
100%, dude. So I'll just give, two big points for people on that side is, looking at one, the business versus just being in real estate, and also understanding how constraints, and it goes from every area. It goes from the type of deals you're doing, the decisions you make, margins on your deals, your time in meetings, and you just continue to put more and more constraints in place. And as you do it, what happens is it actually puts the company a lot more focused, allows you to be more focused, and just get the hell out of the way.
Yeah. And you can let your people do their thing. Right. And I was telling you before we hit record, like my acquisitions guy's better at buying houses than me. Right. Straight up, because that's his thing. I'm not, I'm kind of a dick. Right. And I admit it. No problem. I'm just being honest, like it's just, I'm not a patient person. I'm an aggressive New Yorker. And I think it does piss some sellers off sometimes. And that's why I'm not as involved, because I know that the highest and best use of the company's time is for him to negotiate, right? It's not for me to negotiate. Yes, he does need help from time to time. I have no problem helping him. But when you can align yourself with a team that is really good at what they do, and the key is you have reasonable communication with them, not every 2 minutes, they're going to be able to empower themselves. And I've noticed as I've developed as a leader, it's a work in progress, when I give them a role and they own the role, and I let them know that I'm giving you this role because you're totally worth it and you can handle it, they figure stuff out without even telling you.
Yep.
Stuff just gets done. You're like, shit, I don't even know what's going on, but thanks for letting me know,
Yeah, it's amazing what'll happen on that side of things, but it's all doable. It's just a matter of, understanding some of these principles and start applying them, and you'll see it change. And the cool thing about it, Greg, is I think is people can do it a lot sooner than what they think. A lot of people think they have to grind at it for 10, 15 years, and that's not true.
I like how you said that. That's the last question I'm going to ask until we go into the down market stuff. And this is a honest question. So let's say you have a person listening to this right now. We have a lot of advanced people listening. We also have beginners. So I'm talking to someone who's doing deals. They're making money. This is their full-time thing. If they make the decision tomorrow that they want to scale their company to where they don't have to be involved in the day-to-day for the most part, what is a realistic runway for them to go from the decision they made tomorrow until they're probably not going to be that involved? What do you think let's say in terms of months, like assuming they do the right things and they have marketing and they're not like a total Neanderthal, like what do you think it would take them if they really?
Well, I think once they make the decision and they understand the proper process.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Like they get all that.
They have the proper roadmap and
training, et cetera.
And training and stuff on that. Then I've seen most of my students because I work with students all the time that follow that journey. And typically I set up most of my coaching around 6 months. And then they have to execute. So we're probably talking about a year before they get to the point where they are really starting to make significant jumps on that. But just in 6 months, what we do with a lot of our coaching students, it's very compressed. It's, you're boom, 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 boom. And you're taking these actions and stuff because we already know they work.
It's a system.
So you just got to do it, and you'll see major shifts even in 6 months. But you'll get a point if you really listen to it and apply things that you can actually make a huge shift in 1 year, and you'd be surprised what you can do.
It's true, man. It's true, especially like here's another like thing I've just learned from experience. You've obviously been through this too. It's like I remember when I made my first hire, I was scared shitless. I was like, oh my God, I have real overhead. I got to pay a human being. This is not a VA. This is a real job, real money. I was terrified, man. I was freaking terrified. And a lot of it came from going to one of your boot camps, actually. So shameless plug for Jerry. And I was scared shitless, Jerry. And I'm like, man, I couldn't. Now, like this is years later now, I'm like, how the hell did I never have an assistant? I don't even know how to do half the stuff she does. It's just, and it's like, you just become desensitized and it becomes your new normal. Yes. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, how could I not have done that? So the point I'm trying to make is that when you do this in the beginning, it is very scary, and it's normal that it's scary because you've never done it before, right? But once you realize, and we could do a whole other show on how to hire people. You're an expert at that, but it's like when you get the right person in there and you have your hiring process almost like a marketing funnel and you disqualify people who aren't a fit and you get the right person in the right seat, like that is like, in my opinion, from my experience, that's like 90% of it. And then you plug 100%. Them into a system and then that's the 10% that gets you to 100. But I see a lot of people making a mistake where they they hire a warm body who can fog a mirror, and then they try to make an Army Reserve person a Navy SEAL. And I'm not knocking the Army. I'm just saying, like, they try to hire someone who's not that great and they try to turn them into someone who's amazing. I found that I hire people who are really good and I put them into the system we have that's not perfect. And that is how they optimize for results for themselves and for the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's easier to take like a 5 or 6 and take them to a 9
Yes.
than it is try to take a 1 or 2 and take them to a 5.
That's very different. It's because then you're a motovational coach and you're spending
Yeah.
your whole day. It's like, oh, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And then it's like, if you're asking yourself that question for more than a month, you got to cut them out straight up.
100%. So that's exactly right. And the thing is I think you and I talked, then we go into just justifying.
You know, it's funny. Ever since you said that at your boot camp, I remember watching it and I was on the web version. And that was like the one takeaway I got. It's like, don't justify. Like, I always say this to my team now, and even to people in general. I'm like, you can justify anything. If you don't want to go to the gym today, you know what? There's snow on the ground. I don't want to drive there. You can justify anything, or you can justify why you need to go to the gym because you said you were going to do it. Right. And I found that bad hires I've made in the past, there was always an excuse for some reason why they couldn't do it. There was always a justification and an excuse. And I used to tolerate that crap. And now, you know, obviously nothing is perfect, but there's solutions getting brought to the table and not problems that seem like they're these mountains. You know what I mean? Like they bring these solutions now, you know?
100%, man.
Yeah. So let's talk about down markets, right? The time we're recording this, it's what is it? November of 2022. The sky isn't falling, but interest rates are certainly rising. And the housing market, I mean, I remember I had a project out in Cali and the thing like sold way over ask. And I was like, something's going to change pretty soon because these numbers don't make sense. A 1-bedroom condo selling for $370 in Bonita, California. I don't know about that. So we're in a little bit of a down market now, at least in the major areas where we operate. Like the prices were super high and now they're coming down a little bit. So what have you done, Jerry, over your 20 plus year career? How do you still make money in these down markets so your production line can still be efficient, right? Because we want to make sure we're starting with that production line.
Yeah. You know, I think a couple of things, Greg, on that is, first of all, one of the biggest things that I see on this is that people that come into the market, especially in the last couple of years, not even so much just us as owners of the company, you know, on things, but also your team members that come on board.
Yeah.
I was just on a meeting this morning. This is exactly what's happening and stuff. I've got a team I'm working with, and they've got almost 40 people on sales.
Oh, wow. Okay? It's a big company.
Now, here's the thing. They're all newer in the last couple years. So what's happened on that, and you think about this is exactly where we see a lot of people at, is you got accustomed to new habits in the last couple years on things. Yeah. So what it was really not what I call not a real market. It was really the fantasy market. Okay.
So true.
So what you do is you're doing a lot of Hail Marys. Oh, I'm going to see if this will work. Boom, it sells, right? And you get it sold. So what happens on that is as that shifts, which we're doing right now, is now it shifts from market dependent side of things to real skills. And that's where I see you really have to focus on right now is you've got to work on the skills side of things. You've got to focus on mastering that part of it, because if you don't have the skills, you're going to get eaten up when the market shifts like this. 100%. Then, you know, and it goes for dispo, acquisitions, all these side of things. You have to be more focused towards the client. You have to provide more white glove type service on these type of things. It's not the same as it was before. And so, you know, this on dispo side of things too. It's more about relationships. It's more not blasting everything. It's about getting on the phone, building those relationships, you know, nurturing those relationships. It's about communicating to them even when you don't have a property to sell. You know, it's all these things, and you start building that up. That's the big difference on things. So it's start understanding that no longer are we dependent on a marketplace. you're dependent on skills. So that's one of the
Man,
big,
that
big
is
things.
such a nugget there. And I'm so happy you answered the question that way, because people were so spoiled the last 2 years. It's like,
Oh,
if you put a
100%.
wholesale, we used to have this, I mean, this still happens in our crazy market, but we would put out a wholesale deal, and I had a system, and I still actually sit in the dispo seat in my company, so I'm very familiar with this. We had a system. If we put out a wholesale deal, and it was a legit, like, not like a tweener, I would call it, but that's a topic for another day. We would sell this property, Jerry, for $30,000 to $40,000 more than we were asking on a wholesale deal. This is not on the MLS. And we were making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 spreads. And I'm like, this is great right now. We're going to save a lot of this money, put it in the bank, and buy some distressed assets. But this is not normal. This is not going to last forever. And I would tell my team that, because like they would see and they'd be like, holy crap, like, how did we do that? And I'm like, it's the market. I'm not a genius. No one here's a genius. It's the market. Watch
100%.
this change. And sure as shit, it changed.
Yep. And that's the big thing that I tell people, is that you got to make that shift in the mindset where you thought you were a rock star. It was really the marketplace, but now you really got to work your skills.
100%. And you have to have a deal. That's another thing I realized too. And this is relevant. I've seen that a lot of wholesalers now, whether they're a one-man show or they have a business, right? They're like, oh my God, my deals aren't moving. And I'm like, well, what are the numbers? Right. And we saw that a little bit. And I was like, getting a little concerned, but then we put out a wholesale deal in a bad market, and it sold for 15K over ask because the numbers made sense, So you can't control the market.
No, but you can control where you enter and how you exit. And
Bingo.
that, and so that's really what it comes down to so it comes down, if you know your skills, you sharpen that, then it's just a matter of adjusting on that side of things, and you understand that. And another thing too, to think a lot about too, is realizing that sometimes we've got to be more creative now too.
100%.
Okay? So we got to be more creative on sometimes the exit side of things. I mean, we just done it was last week, I was doing this with my mastermind group, and literally we were going over how to take deals that were basically a seller would want to sell. We can control that deal at a higher price, but sell it on owner financing and sell the note all within 60 days.
Yeah. That's a valid strategy, especially now.
So, yeah. And then it's just like, oh, wow, never thought about that. And it's just about being more creative on that side of things. And it comes down to understanding how to write the notes. Instead of writing one note, we write two notes, one for a first, one for a second. So we can sell the first and get the cash out to the seller.
100%. Yeah. I mean, you got to have those tools in your toolbox. There's another thing I see you're doing. I see your Facebook posts a lot. You're doing novations, right? Which is like the hot, sexy chick at the bar now. Everyone wants to talk to her. Hey, I'm new here. I'm going to see what's going on. So how are you guys implementing these? By the way, if people aren't familiar with novations, like what is a novation if someone is not familiar with that?
So, basically what we're looking at, here's an easy way to describe things, Greg, really, when it comes to this, is if you look at it, as a wholesaler, that we do a lot of deals this way, we're buying down here. So we're buying down here, right? Mm-hmm. And then we're marking it up, selling it here. And then, of course, the fixed flippers want to take it, sell it up here, right?
Yeah, sure.
So that's common on things. But what we realized was on there was a lot of leads coming in that were in a position where we couldn't make it work down here, but we could make it work right here on
Got
things.
it.
But it wasn't a good wholesale deal.
No one would buy it. A cash buyer wouldn't buy it. I know.
Right. But it wasn't and then we thought, man, if we could sell top of the market, we have to rehab a little bit of it. What if we just sold it a little bit below what the market value is, what we call the as-is value? And that's the as-is value based upon the basically open market, like an owner-occupant coming in.
Yep.
You think about those, right? You think somebody, just for example, you got a property, it's worth 200. Somebody comes along, they see it and they say, wow, I can get in there. That one's for 200. We can pick this thing up for 175. All the rest of them are 200, 210. We can pick this up for 175. Now, if we were wholesaling, we might be down around 100, a little bit under that things, right?
Yeah.
On a novation, we could possibly be at 130, and we
Yeah.
can control that thing.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, the nice thing about it, the novation allows us to, if you look at it, really, it's kind of cool because we can basically wholesale nice houses.
Yes. That don't need a lot of work, that just
Yeah.
are dated maybe.
Yeah, they're just dated a little bit. And the big difference on this is everybody said, what's the difference? Well, it's pretty simple. A regular wholesale deal where we're doing an assignment, we're assigning our rights in a contract to somebody else. They're taking over our existing contract. But in an novation, we're replacing parties, replacing a contract, and we're just changing that completely. So now, instead of maybe just an A and a B, we got an A and a B and a C involved. And all we're doing is a little extra paperwork. And basically what we're doing is now taking homes that we could never do before, and we're basically wholesaling in a real easy way format here is we're wholesaling nicer homes. Okay.
100%.
To
On the leads you already got.
On the leads you already have. And it's so, now you still be got to conscious about the marketplace right now, because you've still got to adjust things a little bit for the market itself. But at the same time, people will do that. We got another novation closing this week. It's what it does is it allows you, here's the way I look at it, Greg, is I look at it as a way to have extra ammo in your gun. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know how we do, we go in, we talk to a seller. A lot of investors are one-shot seller or buyers. Okay. They're one shot. Oh, I only can do this. And the key is to understand is how to work programs. And that's the key when it comes to that. So we're always focused on programs. It's like, Greg, I'm so sorry, but unfortunately your property doesn't qualify for our cash out program. But I do have another program if you're interested in hearing more about it. Oh yeah, tell me more about it.
So well, here's what I got. I got the equity protection program. This is exactly.
Bingo!
Yeah. Now it's reframing the call, man. That's powerful. Well, the thing with novations that I've realized is that a lot of the times, and I learned a lot of this from Brewer, but it's like if you have a house that is like worth 175, as in my market, it'd be like times 200K. But anyway, just that's the way it is in New York. If you have a house that's worth X as is, 200 grand, right? And on the market, it would trade fast because you know what you're doing at 175. You can not only pay more than the other people if you're competing with people, but a lot of sellers in my market are not distressed, Jerry. They're not in a,
that's the thing.
They're not an ostrich with their head in the sand. Like we get some of those, but they're not, every day. So you deal with reasonable people, and you generally, because they're reasonable, they don't need to get out of their house in 30 days. They're willing to wait 60 to 90 days, maybe 120 days to get the number they want. So it's like, if you want your price, I need my terms. If you want your terms, I need my price. I was explaining this to somebody today. It's just, how do I solve their problem with the right tool?
Yeah. And it's a matter of, that's what I say. It really, you're just exchanging. It's like, you want a higher price. Okay, that's great. I can give you that in exchange. I just need access to the property, ability to have, reasonable access, the ability to show it, and market the property, and that's it. So
that's it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are down with that. And especially now I'm seeing, at least in our market, it's like, sellers are a little bit more reasonable than they are now, than they were, because of what's going on.
We're starting to see that shift more. We remember too, that's our responsibility to educate them.
100%. It is. And a lot of people too, I've realized, is when you build relationships with them, and you're actually having the right conversations, shameless plug for your REI Sales Academy. It's like, the sellers want to do business with you. And it's usually like, it's the price getting in the way, or maybe their relatives, whatever the deal killer is. But it's like, if they like you and they really want to work with you, and it's just a matter of, like you said, putting them in the right program, when you have that trust built, it's a lot easier to make a presentation how you can solve their problem versus like having it be like a commodity. Like, what's your offer? Well, here's my offer. No. Okay. Why not? It's like, you want to kind of get away from that if you can. I mean, some sellers are like that. I will say, like, some people are just, you can't really build rapport with them, but most of them you can. When they see you're there to help them solve their problem, I've found that I've not found it be like, I've seen sellers be very open to terms, and like, even to another thing that we do that people are like surprised by. It's like, if we have let's say we can't novate it because the condition is just too bad or something like that, we'll tell the seller, we're not the buyer for this because you want too much money, But if you want to try to get that price, we would need a contract with a contingency in order to like let us wholesale it. Basically, we just tell the seller what we're doing. I have found 9 out of 10 sellers are down for that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
told them what you're going to do in advance. So then if you can't sell it for some reason, they know that's their risk.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
like a lot of wholesalers just like, okay, cool, let's sign it up. And then they call them 10 days later, hey, sorry, I didn't have a buyer. It's like, you just, I don't know. I found being transparent in this business is like
100%
so much
right.
easier.
You know, it's so funny. I think back I was doing this in the 90s, and I didn't even know what things I was doing, really. But I remember back then, and I would go out and work with sellers, meet with them, and they say, "Oh, I just can't do that." And I said, "Well, I do have another program." And even back then, I was doing this. I started doing that. I said, "It's called my option to purchase program." I can't guarantee you that I can help you on this, but I'll do everything I can and take it to my database of funders. So I'll push this for you. So I would write up an option to purchase
Yep.
the home. I would give them $1 for that option, no shit. And I would control their home for 90 days. And then I would turn around and market it. And I just let them know that. So it's pretty well the same thing on that side of things, but that's what I would do. And that actually came out and here's the cool thing. I done this. I actually done this on a church. And I sold the church this way. I've done it on grocery stores, all kinds of stuff.
That's the beauty about real estate, why it is still a sexy thing. It's like you can do these deals on any sort of asset class. It doesn't matter what it is, right? And I've just found that, with investors, the more transparent you and your sales team can be with the sellers, the more they're going to trust you. And they're just going to be so much more flexible with maybe issues that come down the line. Like I'll give you a good example. There's a house, barely any involvement on my end, but according to Brett, he was stuck on a number. This is in Connecticut, in like actually a lower end part of Connecticut, stuck on a number. And I told Brett, I said, listen, if he's stuck on that number, we need a 10-day inspection period with the ability to wholesale it. And the guy said, that's absolutely fine. We got it under contract and got the property sold for a pretty good spread. I think it's like a 17K spread. But the seller knew in advance that because he was being a little pesky with his price, he was going to have the uncertainty of not knowing if this was going to go down. This ended up working out, right? But like, if we were to, like, the point I'm trying to say is like, just be upfront with people. Like the sellers know you're making money. Like they're not idiots. Like they know what's going on. If you just tell them what you're doing, they're going to be so much more open to working with you and getting you access and getting you info. Like it's just so much easier way to run a company, right? Instead of just hiding the fact that you're making a profit. Like we tell the sellers, hey, we're making a profit on your property. It's got to work for you, but it's got to work for us. And like, the sellers appreciate that because some other investors are like, oh yeah, I'm going to offer you top dollar. It's like, no, you're not,
100%, Greg. And what's funny too, right now, I'm seeing another big thing. I think it's important in the shifting market is, we talk about a lot, in the sales training, as like price anchors and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
But another thing to think about now too, is I'm hitting a lot of my students on this and my own team as market anchors. Okay.
Yeah.
And especially now is start using market anchors. So it might be something along, Greg, of like, hey, Greg, I'm sure you're aware of obviously, the gas prices and the inflation's going on and, how the Fed's doing the rate hikes on interest rates. You're aware of all that, aren't you, Greg? And most of the time, Greg, oh, yes. So I'm market anchoring too. Okay. And
100%.
So that's another little thing you can add in. Some of your listeners might take that and you start applying that as well as some of the other tactics we talk about. It just allows you to, one, they trust you more, you become the expert on that side of things, and you're setting the groundwork.
Yeah, and it just sets the groundwork for a good sales call to solve a problem. I think a lot of people, they feel like they need to know all these tips and tactics, and they're very helpful. But if you start any sales call, and I've said this to people, I can't even count how many times, if you go in there with a problem solver hat and you have the sales tactics and strategies, you're going to be dynamite. But if you have the best strategies in the world, but you don't have a problem solver hat on, it's going to be tough for you to follow the sales process because you're starting with the wrong foundation versus starting with the right foundation.
Yeah. Well, I think we always talk about this. It's, you're trying to work on the logical brain when people are making decisions with the emotional brain.
100%. 100%.
So
Jerry, man, you're a wealth of knowledge. So, as we're coming close to our hour here, you recently did an acquisition of a very popular trading company that you now own. So congrats on that.
thank you,
So
bro.
tell us a little bit about, what you did, what that company is, and how you're changing the game in the real estate industry.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, it's everybody. I think a lot of listeners should know this. I don't think so if you don't. I mean, Greg's very familiar with it too. But
I had
it's
insider access before it even happened.
yes,
I knew what was
it's
happening.
REI Sales Academy that was created by John Martinez, and I purchased the company from him this year. Something we started working on last year, but we acquired the company this year. John, as Greg knows, has really created the gold standard when it comes to sales training for anybody in the real estate investment space. It's just it's kind of everything. Even a lot of trainings that have come off that have been created have been spun off of John's one way or another, and he really created a gold standard when it comes to this. And I was already doing trainings anyways in that space. And I just, John and I talked, we thought it was a great fit. So we acquired the company, and our goal is to continue to expand that company through working with the current students, not change anything on that. All we're going to do is add value to that. So really what we're looking at now is, I think Greg is looking at Sales Academy 2.0.
Yeah.
And so we're going to add, because obviously John had the tremendous sales knowledge, experience, but he didn't have the 20 some years in the field of doing deals experience. And that's what we're bringing to the academy now.
It's a match made in heaven, man. You take John's sales system, you marry it with your real estate knowledge and business knowledge. It's like a recipe for success, man. So congrats on that.
Well, thank you.
REIsalesacademy.com is the domain.
Yep, REIsalesacademy.com. Just check that out, and be glad to work with anybody that's needing help there. And we have an academy, online academy, plus we do live trainings every week. So
are they still Wednesdays at 10 Central?
Yes. Yep. Sure.
Or not? Is it 10 Central? Yeah, 10 Central.
Yeah, 10 Central. Yep.
10 Central. Yeah. And then Jerry, you also have some other trainings that you put out. I've been through some of them. They're fantastic. You have systems training, and you got a lot of stuff going on, man. You really know your stuff, man. You're very respected in this business.
Well, the other side is what we do is we call our systems operations training. It's a 2-day event that we do. We actually do it right in our office. And the reason we do it in our office is we learned that most investors don't really understand how we run this as a company, like we started off here today with, and they don't understand all the moving parts. They don't understand the different departments. Doesn't mean you have to have a huge team, but you still need to understand the functions of the production line. Mm-hmm. And what they do is, so by doing that 2-day event, people can come in, experience that, get a chance to work with the team, get a chance to see all our moving parts. Then on day 2, what we do is divide up into basically little groups, and we just take individuals and we basically rip apart the company and help them lay out a new game plan, which you're familiar with. You were involved in one too.
Yeah. So now I got 2 great employees. Thank you.
So it's we keep those small. We do them in our office. In fact, we do have one coming up next week, but that by the time you get this out air, that'll be past that. But the next one coming up is January 19th and 20th on things. So hopefully, some of your viewers can see this on time.
What do you do them every 60 days usually?
Yeah, about every 60 days.
60 days.
Yep, January 19th, 20th. And all you got to do is, you can hit me up on social media. Just follow me, Jerry Green there on that. You can go to my Instagram, which is the Jerry Green, or go right to my website too. It's thejerrygreen.com. Pretty simple on that side. You'll see the events coming up, and love to, be able to help you guys on that. I think the results speak for themselves on that. So I don't need to hit it too hard.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry knows his stuff. He's so well versed in this. And the big thing that I like about Jerry is that, number one, he's a great guy. And number two, he knows the business and he's doing the business. He's a guru, not a guru, as they would say. He's doing the business. He's got a real business, and they're doing real deals. So, I mean, he's got in the trenches knowledge, and he's got a great team who I know pretty well, and he's got a well-oiled machine. So I highly encourage you, whether it's sales training, the ops training, or both, thejerrygreen.com, REIsalesacademy.com, which I'm very familiar with. And listen, Jerry, it's always a pleasure talking with you. We'll make sure we have both of those links up in the show notes when Anna gets a hold of this. And man, it's always a pleasure doing these pods with you, man. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you, bro. Same way. And always appreciate you, man. Okay.
See ya.
All right. See you, buddy.